Hi everyone, welcome to the pre-September mock debrief for September 26th attempt. This is section B debrief for case study number 1, which is Lux Bay and Company. Now, I have already done the debrief for section A, all the three case studies on YouTube. You can check out the playlist, it is there, and the link will be there in the description, so you can go and check that out as well. So in this case study, I will be step by step explaining you the entire case study and some of the other tips and tricks also for you to be for you to be able to understand everything in detail. So let's start with the case study. This is a classic 30 marker question that comes as your question number 1 in section B in your final exam also. There's one little tweak that that ACCA has done this time in this particular question, but I will be telling you what that tweak is. So let's start by understanding the requirements first. So first of all, whenever you start by your case study, when you start reading it, your first agenda has to be always reading the requirements first. You first understand question 1 individually, 2 individually, 3 individually, and then you move ahead with the case study. Do not ever deep dive into the case study at the first instant, because this will lead to a problem. That would be that if, let's suppose, say you are reading the case study but you don't really know what you're looking for, right? You don't know the requirements right now, you're just reading it like a newspaper, so it does not really make sense. Unless you know what the requirements are, you should not be reading the case study. So that would be the first step of approaching the question, is that you read the requirements. So because your knowledge based questions are also part of these questions, so knowledge based questions do not have any relation with the case study, right? So we don't really need the case study right now. We can simply answer these questions right now also without having to know about the details in the case study. So let's read the first requirement that we have. Requirement first says ISA 315, identifying and assessing the risk of ROMM, states that for identified ROMM at assertion level, the auditor must assess inherent risk by assessing the likelihood and magnitude of misstatement. We all know what inherent risk is. I hope you people know that. In doing so, the auditor needs to take into account how and degree to which extent inherent risk factors affect suspectability of relevant assertions to misstatement. So this is basic information regarding ISA 315. Now, explain the inherent risk. Okay, so the first requirement is that you have to explain inherent risk. That means you have to give your definition of what inherent risk is. Now, if you think that you are not able to rote learn the definition on its own, and you understand the meaning of inherent risk, then yes, you can write the definition in your own language also. It's not at all necessary that you have to copy paste the exam bookish knowledge. It's just that whatever you're writing, that should make sense, right? That's that. So that's the first part of the requirement. And give examples of 4 factors. So now these are the 4 factors, so 4 marks for them, and that increase inherent risk associated with the financial statement. So now you have to talk about 4 factors which will influence that your inherent risk will increase because of these 4 situations or factors, right, or circumstances. So you have to talk about those 4 examples, and this is for 5 marks. So 1 plus 4 is equals to 5. So bifurcation understanding is also very important while you are reading the question, because then only, as per that only, you'll write a smaller answer or a lengthier answer, right? Again, guys, I would say one thing over here: all those students who have just listed down the factors, complexity, just written the words complexity and etc, the other words that we have, you are not going to get marks, because examiner is not a fool that they will give you one word, 1 mark per word. Nobody is going to do that. This is not a junior level paper, right? You are in a professional qualification, so you have to explain how do you feel that that is a factor. Let's suppose that you've given the example of complexity, so how do you feel that that is relevant to this inherent risk? So you have to also explain complexity, right? So that is how you're going to get full 1 marks. Nobody is going to give you marks for listing, right? If they would have given you, this would not have been for 5 marks. Plus here they would have written list 4 factors. They've written give examples of 4 factors. That means you need to explain them also. I am saying this, emphasizing this again and again, because a lot of people, when I'm evaluating the mocks right now, they have done this mistake. So you don't have to do this mistake. mistake ever. All right. So let's read the answer. I have already written the answers for all the questions so that I don't waste time typing them out in front of you. I will explain these answers. These sample answers have been drafted by me, and these will be available in the Drive link, which is there in the description box below. So you can go and check that out. So inherent risk basic definition I have provided over here, that what does inherent risk means. This is the basic direct bookish knowledge question. And I've picked up the definition from their own also. And here I have written, in other words, it describes something about the nature of the business or its transactions that make it particularly susceptible to material misstatement because of the nature, that your nature is inherently more riskier than it should have been, and hence there is inherent risk. So I've tried to explain it in simpler languages also. If you want, you can only write this main definition. You don't need to write these other words or additionally or all of those things. One proper definition for 1 mark is more than enough, right? That's your definition. Now coming to the four types of factors. I've written 5, but you can write only 4 because that is what the requirement is. You can write any 4 out of these. So the first one is complexity. So if you see, I have written the word for all of these, but I have also explained them. That is exactly what you also need to do when you are writing your answers. If you're not explaining, you're not going to get any marks. All right. So complexity arises because of the nature of the information or the way that it is prepared. So complex accounting, let's suppose IFRS 16 leases is little complex. IFRS 9 is little complex, financial instruments. So there are more chances that we are going to, make mistakes in these standards, in understanding these standards, rather than if we talk about IAS 2 or IAS 16, let's suppose it, right? So these are, comparatively easier topics than these. So there would be lesser mistakes or lesser chances of mistakes over here, right? So that's complexity. Then is subjectivity. Of course, if your item is subjective like depreciation, provisions, all of those are very subjective, correct? So your opinion on that and my opinion on that could be very different. So that is subjectivity. Results from inherent limitations in the ability to prepare the information objectively, choice of valuation methodology or basis of accounting estimate. So what methodology you are following? Let's suppose for calculation of depreciation, one person is following single, your straight line method. One person is following reducing balance method. So that is again subjective, right? So that's more inherently riskier than the other situation. So that's subjectivity. Then you have change. If the conditions keep, it is very, very dynamic. If it keeps on changing with the situations like customer preferences, customer change, geographical expansions, etc. So those are again prone to more riskier situations. Uncertainty, when you don't know something or the other can anyway happen, so that's uncertain. Susceptibility to misstatement due to management bias or other fraud factors. So supposingly, because a particular item is very, very management bias prone, right? So that will again be very, very inherently risky for us because it is based on management bias. They will never be neutral, for example, right, on a certain situation. So that is again susceptibility to misstatement. So that is your 5th point. So this is actually a knowledge based question. You do not need to refer to the case study for this one because this is a direct question, direct 5 marks. And I would urge every one of you to take the knowledge based questions very, very seriously, because these will account for 10 to 12% of your entire paper. And these are just easy marks that examiner serves you on a platter. Okay. And you cannot not take that serving from their platter, right? Because you have to score very good marks. So it is essential that at least we are able to get these easy 10-12 marks in our platter super easily, right? So this is one example of such marks. Let's move ahead with the requirement 2 now. Let's read that requirement. Requirement 2 says explain 8 audit risks. So this is a classic audit risk question wherein it asks us 8 risks and responses to that. Now we have to refer to the case study. We have to now read and go back to the case study to read it, because now this question is for the case study. It is a 16 marker question, classic 8 points we have to write. Now let's move ahead with the case study. Now this is a case study which is a little lengthy, right? There is so much of information over here which is given to us. As a student, guys, you have to play very smart when you're reading these case studies, because examiner will definitely try to trick you, right? And you do not have to fall into their traps. And for that, I have a very good technique as to what you can follow, which will also help you in time management, all right? Because we are always, thinking how to manage time. So this might also be helpful over there. The first thing is, if you guys see this entire case study is not a big chunky paragraph. They have divided the entire case study into like small paragraph. This is one paragraph, this till here, this another paragraph, till here, that another paragraph, till here, another paragraph. So you see there are 5 6 multiple different kinds of paragraphs. Whenever you are reading the question, this is a very important tip for everybody who's struggling to write answers plus manage time, both of these. Okay, it is very essential that you do not read the case study all at once, because we are humans, guys. If I also was in your position and I was also reading the question, probably when I'm reading this, I understand everything, that the new client or the accounting year, what is it doing, background information, basically, right? When I go over here, by the time that I reach here, probably I have forgotten what was mentioned over here, because there's too much information over here. Probably I've forgotten what was mentioned over here. Even if you highlight, you still have to read the entire sentence, right, to understand better what it was trying to say. So why are you reading the entire case study twice or thrice when you can read it only once? Right? So please make sure that you're not reading the entire case study all at once like a newspaper. It's not a newspaper. You legit have to understand each and every line for you to be able to write your answers better, right? Now, the technique for this one is always go paragraph by paragraph and start either two things. Either start drafting the answers or write the final answer then and there only. Example, let's suppose I have read this statement, this entire paragraph, and I found that there was one audit risk over here. I will go to my answer sheet on the right hand side. I will start either, I will draft. Draft basically means I'll copy paste the statement from the question into my answer, and then I'll move ahead with, I'll not explain, I'll not write the response right now. I'll then move to the next paragraph. Once I'm done with the entire question, I have my draft ready. I'll then fill in the blanks. I'll then write the explanation, the response in relation to that statement. With that, you wouldn't have to come back to your statements again. Okay, this is the draft method that you can follow, but this is also little loopholes are there in this method, because sometimes when you write the statement, you do not copy paste the entire statement, then you forget what did I read, then you go back to the question, read it again, right? That is what you do. Then the next technique of this is writing the final answer then and there. That means that when you've read the first paragraph, you find one risk, you write the risk, you identify the risk, you write the explanation, you write the response, done. You can straight away ignore this paragraph after that. You do not have to refer to this paragraph ever again in your life. That is the best method, my dear students, if you follow this. I have done this technique personally with all of my students, and this method I have come across as the best method with my teaching experience of 4 years and my personal experience of 3 more years of ACCA journey, that this is the best method to write the answers and save your time. So all of the students who are facing time management issues and you feel that I take half an hour extra, 45 minutes extra, probably try this technique. I'm sure it is going to do wonders for you if you already do not do that. All right. Now, enough of tips and tricks. Now, let's deep dive into the techniques of the question, and I will follow the final method only today. I'll show you how I actually do that method. All right. Let's read. It is 1st July 25. Whatever important things that you read, dates are very important. So start highlighting whatever important things you are coming across. So 1st July, you are the audit supervisor at Aaron and Company and planning the audit of Lux Bay Company for the year ended 30th of September. So we are sitting before the year end, and year end is 30th September. Lux Bay is an online retailer of luxury bags, watches from leading brands sourced all over the world. The forecasted profit before tax for the year ended is $23.7 million. So that is your profit before taxes. Since this is the first time your firm is auditing Lux Bay, the planning meeting with finance director was detailed. Notes have been summarized below. Now, we all know that if it is our first ever client, it is a red flag for us, because if it is a first ever client for us, we don't know as auditors, do I have the relevant information from them? Do I have relevant team of mine? Do I know their rules, regulations, their standards that they follow? Do I know their opening balances correctly or not? I don't have enough information about that client, right? Let's suppose say you are a new student with me who has just enrolled before the exams. So I, of course, do not know about your history. How many times have you failed the paper? What did you prepare? How did you prepare? What questions have you done already? But if it is my old student, I already know that person, that yes, that student is a hardworking student for me and they will do it very easily. So I do know some information about them, but for you who is a new student with me, I will not know everything about you. So that is a problem. That is something that I should focus more upon. Probably I will give you more time and more energy to deal with you because I don't really know you. Similarly, auditor will also give more time, more energy, more experience, more people, number of people, more time in planning to the client. That is your response. Your risk is the biggest risk, which is your detection risk. Now this is something which, if you do not write in the exam, because the only thing, guys, that you need to focus upon when you're writing your answers for the risk is that you're actually talking about the risk, because a lot of people do not actually talk about the risk. They do not write the risk, they just explain, they write the stories, but actually what will happen because of that stories, they do not write that. So it's essentially very, very important that you are referring to the risk. So detection risk, inherent risk, control risk, or you're writing overstatement, understatement, misstatement, all of these words in your answers. If these words are missing, you are not going to get full marks. Okay, so let me show you my answer for this one and then we'll move ahead with the next one. Okay, so this is how I format my answers. You can also refer to the webinar that I have recently done for the students. In that webinar also, I have briefly explained the structure that you should be following for the risk, and exactly that structure I have followed over here as well. So the first thing that you always do is a heading. Now this is not compulsory, but as per me, this is important because it gives an overview to the examiner and it makes their life easier, that they can just read the heading and they'll get to know what exactly you are talking about over here. Correct? So that is your heading. If you write it, good. If you don't write it, it's fine. No marks are going to get cut, or no extra marks you're going to get because of the headings. Please make sure that, right? Then if I talk about how the bifurcation of mark happens, is you get 1 mark for alt risk, 1 mark for responses. This 1 mark is further divided into half and half. Half mark for identifying the risk from the question and half a mark for explaining the risk. That is the reason for my presentation purposes as well, I have given 2 separate paragraphs. I have not combined these 2 together because again, you have to make the life of the examiner super easy, right? So over here, if I see this answer, I'll see, okay, half a mark done, half a mark done, done. I don't have to find things in your question, in your answers, right? So please make sure that your presentation also is very good so that it gives good impression to the examiner, nothing else, right? So you write the statement from the question. Now these words which I have written over here, these are for your reference. These are not that you have to write in the exam. That's the reason I've given them in red. This is for your reference so that you understand the difference between these 2 paragraphs and understand what to write in the half a mark also. All right. Statement from question. This is a new client since this is the first time you're auditing the company. So I've copy pasted the exact same line from the question. Correct. Now explanation. As the team is not familiar with accounting policies, transactions, balances, there may be misstatements in the opening balances because we don't know about them at all right now, right? So there is increased detection risk due to lack of in-depth understanding of the client. Detection risk, I hope you already know of from your concepts, correct? So if you're writing this, but if you forgot to write this, 0 marks. This is the core, this is the crux. Okay, if you're skipping on this, nobody is going to give you marks. Plus, if you skip on the explanation, again, nobody is going to give you marks because how are you saying that it is a detection risk? So both these paragraphs are equally important to get that half mark. And mind you guys, this half mark can make or break your exam. A lot of people who fail at 49, they understand that the importance of these half marks also. So you cannot take these half a mark for granted. Okay, now a response could be that I should ensure that they have suitable experienced team, adequate time is given, understanding of the risk is there, etc. So you can focus upon these. This is exactly how you are supposed to write your risks, right? So we have written 1 red flag. Let's move to the question back. Now, the method I've told to you. Now, in this paragraph, I'm done with this paragraph. I have written my answer also. Now, I can simply ignore this paragraph. I don't need to go back to this paragraph ever again in my life, right? So, I don't have to reread it twice, thrice, and waste my time, right? So, that is how you are also supposed to do your answers, which is going to save your time. Let's move to the main paragraph. Although company only sells through website, it has a network of 3 warehouses in different cities to reduce shipping costs, so that they, they have different in different parts of the country, so that they can easily serve their customers. The company's management has recently introduced a director's bonus scheme. Okay, so let's highlight this. I think this is important. Introduced a director's bonus scheme to further incentivize growth in profit. So they have incentivized. That means that if the profit grows, the directors are going to get a bonus on that. Director bonuses were previously fixed. So previously it was fixed that every year you're going to get 10,000, for example. But now, however, from this year, directors will be paid a bonus on the gross profit growth. So how much the profit grows, on that basis, you are going to get a bonus. Now think from a common sense perspective, okay? Not from an audit perspective, but from common sense perspective. If let's suppose say I told to you people only that you people are having internships under me, and in the year one, I said to you that, hey, listen, you are going to get a fixed bonus of 10,000. Okay, so you're working normally, you're doing things normally, etc. Correct. But next year, I say to you, hey, listen, you are going to get 10% of the gross profit that the company earns. And this gross profit presentation or showing or calculation is of course based upon you, because you're the director of the company, you're in the top level management. Correct. So ultimately your brain would be like, okay, if my GP is, let's suppose, at 10,000, I am going to get 10% of it, which is 1,000. But what if this GP increases to 20,000 and I will get a 10% of it, which is 2,000? So I will be happy with this, or I'll be happy with this? Of course, I'll be happy with this, right? So my intentional motive would be that I will overstate this profit, that even though the profit was 10,000, I will do something, I will reduce my cost, reduce my expenses, understate my expenses, and I will show that yes, the director bonuses are so much, which is 20,000. Correct. So here there is a potential risk of biasness, right? Because I have incentives to increase the bonuses. So the director bonuses were initially fixed, but now it has been, from this year, the directors will be paid on the profit growth. So there is a risk that directors will intentionally try to overstate the profits and understate the expenses. So when they overstate the profits, they'll overstate the revenues, incomes, etc., and decrease the profits, and hence my profits, revenues, incomes would be overstated and my expenses would be understated. Correct. So this is a potential risk. I'm not saying that they are doing this. I'm just saying that this is a potential risk. Correct. Now over here, my response can be that my team, which is audit team, they have to be more professionally skeptic. They have to see what kind of manipulations can happen. They have to review the financial statements to see if what kind of if all the amounts that they have calculated is the correct or not, right? So this is your second drawback, second red flag over here, which is director bonuses. Let's see the answer also. So again, I've copy pasted the statement from the question, which is going to get me half a mark, and then half a mark I'm going to get via this. So director bonuses were previously fixed. However, from this year, the directors will be paid on the gross profit growth. There's a risk that directors will try to overstate the profit by increasing the revenues and incomes and decreasing the expenses. So my main thing is over here. If I do not write this overstatement of profits, revenues, incomes, etc., I am not going to get full marks, 0 marks. All right. So this is your explanation, and your responses can be very similar to what I talked about. The team should be aware of the increased risk of manipulations and should assign more experienced team members to significant estimates and judgmental areas. Correct. Let's move to the next one now. Just a minute. Okay. Now I am done with this paragraph. Correct. I have identified another risk. I have identified in total, I have identified 2 risks till now out of 8. Correct. Let's move to the next paragraph now. So this is next paragraph. Lux-based payroll processing has always been outsourced to Salwire Limited. So they have already outsourced this one of its function to a third party, which is okay, right? But recently the management was not satisfied. Okay, so not satisfied with Salwire, not satisfied with the performance of the service provider, and therefore cancelled the contract in early June 20X 5. So now what is happening is that previously they had outsourced this function to a third party, but now they have cancelled the contract because the performance was not good. Now your focus has to be on performance because they are saying the performance was not great. So probably the controls that the company has applied, the service provider has applied, will not be adequate, will not be correct, will not be effective, will not be efficient. Correct. So it can lead to increased problems or chances of misstatements, right? There could be the payroll expenses or the payroll liabilities or the payroll cost amounts, whatever you want to write it. Those might be misstated because the controls are not correct. So probably they have written something as wrong. Something might not be complete, something might not be accurate, right? So that is the issue that you're going to talk about. And here you can also write that the clerks over here may not be skilled enough to process the payments, correct? Process the payroll, because payroll is very, very crucial for us. So that is the main thing that we are going to focus upon, right? Okay. Now let's read the next line also, and then we'll see the answer for this one. Just give me a moment. Salwire has been responsible for processing and making payroll details and maintaining employee records. So that is the work that they usually used to do. Two of Luckbase account clerks were trained within a week and given the task of maintenance of employee records and processing of payroll in mid June 25. Okay, now the full scenario. Let's understand the full scenario now. What happened was that I as a company, I outsourced my payroll function to a third party, which is Salwire. Okay. But now I do not really like how they're working and how they're processing the controls, etc. With their performance, I don't really like. And hence I will be canceling the contract with them. Now, if I cancel my contract with them for obvious reasons, they will not be working for me. So I should be having a backup. And who's that backup? Accounts clerk is the backup. Do you people think clerk is responsible or they have experience enough? Because again, they have been trained within a week. So do you think that within a week, if somebody is getting trained, they will be efficient or responsible enough and they'll be able to do the right job? I don't think so, right? So that is the problem over here. This is another red flag that my payroll costs, my payroll expenses might not be correct, and that could lead to misstatement. It can be overstatement also, it can be understatement also, so it can be mix of both. So you can write misstatement of payroll records. Correct? Let's read the answer now. Okay. Just a minute. Yeah. So statement from the question, I've copy pasted the exact statement, right? Let's read the explanation. The controls applied by service provider on payroll may not be accurate, which we discussed, or effective, leading to increased chances of misstatement in payroll expense and payroll liability at the year end. This is the highlight of your answer. This is something that you have to write. If you do not write this, you're not going to get full marks. Okay. Additionally, the clerks may not be skilled. The clerks, who clerks? Accounts clerk, right? Who are the people in my team? May not be skilled to process payroll or maintain employee records and may therefore make mistakes in leading to increased chances of misstatements in the payroll. So there can be the problem of misstatement of the payroll records, payroll expenses over here. Right? So that would be your explanation, and my response would be that I will obtain understanding of the type of contract, and based on that, the author should test the controls that they have implemented, the third party has implemented, to check if the controls are effective or not. We can also obtain type 1 and type 2 report also from them, right? To understand what type of controls do they have in place, correct? So that is your third risk that we have talked about. So now we are done till here, and till here we are done with the entire paragraph. We don't need to go to this, portion again. So this is going to make your life super, super simple if you're doing in such a scenario, right? Let's move to the next paragraph now. All right, let's start. The initial analytical analysis of information yielded the following results. So they did some analytical analysis over here, and then they got following results. The revenue growth is estimated to increase from 4 to 15% in a year, while gross profit margin will increase from 25 to 31%. The operating profit margin is, however, predicted to be drop from 18 to 11. Now you see over here, guys, again, whenever you're reading the case study, always keep your brain open. Okay, don't just mindlessly read the statements and try and connect the dots. Okay, Above, we saw about the director bonuses. We saw that there could be a situation wherein he is increasing the revenues and the incomes and gross profit margins, correct? Now, over here, if you see, it has increased from 4 to direct 15, from 25 direct to 31, correct? The gross profit has only increased, but the actual, which is operating profit, which is after your expenses, the general expenses that you have, after doing that, the profit has actually decreased. So there could be a classification risk over here, that probably some costs that related to gross profit, that related to direct expenses, that should have been there in the gross profit margin, those have been included as in operating expenses. I hope you, as an account student, you would definitely know what are direct costs and what are indirect costs, right? In whenever we are calculating the gross profit, we subtract direct expenses, and whenever we are calculating operating profit or profit after tax or profit before tax, right, net profit basically, that time we deduct the indirect expenses, correct? So here there could be a situation that some of the direct expenses, let's suppose 10,000 rupees direct expenses, they have not included over here so that their profit increases, but the same 10,000 they have classified as indirect expense. So technically, some expense which should have been made as direct expense, they have wrongly classified that as an indirect expense, just so that they can show their gross profit margin to increase, right? So there's a risk of misclassification of direct expenses as indirect expenses or operating expenses, you can write, in order to enhance your gross profit so that your directors get better bonuses. Again, I'm not saying that this is happening right now. I'm just saying there is a potential situation like this, which because of which this is happening, correct? So this is what we have to talk about over here. So let's see the answer now. Just use your brain when you are reading the statements. You'll easily be able to crack the answers super easily. Okay. So statement from the question I've written. Now, there's a risk of misclassification. This is the keyword over here, correct? Of direct expenses as operating expenses in order to enhance gross margin. Directors will be encouraged to do so in order to increase the bonus amount. This is exactly what I told to you. So this is linkage with your risk above. Linkage, right? This would lead to, now this is again super important if you forget this to write, because ultimately whenever you're writing your risk, you have to talk about how is it impacting your financial statements. If you do not write that, you are not going to score full marks, right? So this would lead to overstatement of revenue and understatement of cost of goods sold, which is part of your gross profit. Correct. Now over here, we'll talk about the responses, that we'll take a breakdown of the schedule of operating expenses, check they have classified it correctly between the operating and direct expenses or not, etc. Correct. Super simple, super easy. Let's move ahead. Okay. Yeah. So now we're done with this paragraph also. We have identified 4 red flags. Now let's move to this paragraph right here. Okay. Luxbay's internal IT team developed its own mobile application for $4.9 million. Now, amounts are super essential for selling luxury products through the application. The mobile application will increase the ease with which customers book orders and is estimated to increase visitors on the platform. So now they've in-house developed a mobile application. That means they would have done some research also on it, and after that they have developed it, and they are saying that this will help the customers to place better orders, right? This is the use case basically. Luxbay has capitalized the entire amount, which includes 1.2 million spent on legal fees for registering the application with the regulator and training employees on how to use the application for sales purposes. The application is being tested and is expected to roll out to the customers soon. So right now it is not even in the market, and we know as per IAS 38 intangible assets, your there should be a bifurcation between your research and development expenditures, and your training cost can never ever be capitalized. You cannot capitalize your training cost because it is not directly attributable to the asset. Only the costs that are directly attributable to the assets in bringing them into the working conditions, only those can be capitalized. Correct. So over here, my potential problem is that why have they capitalized the entire amount of 1.2 million, which includes the training employees also cost, right? So that is my risk, that my assets are overstated, my expenses are understated. Correct? So that is my problem. And then my response would be that we'll ask the management that what is the rationale for increasing, for showing training cost as your asset, and remove this cost from the asset in your financial statements. Correct? Let's move to the answer now. Okay. So statement from the question I've copy pasted exactly. While legal fees may be added to the asset cost, training cost of employee cannot be capitalized as per IAS 16. We know as per IAS 16 that if we have any asset, your application is an asset for you. So that cannot be, you cannot actually capitalize that. And this is a problem. This is not IAS 16. This is IAS 38 because your mobile application is an intangible asset. You cannot touch the asset, correct? So this is IAS 38 because it has been developed in-house. You've not purchased it, right? So by capitalizing the full amount, including training and management, has overstated intangible assets and profits and understated expenses, if you want to write it. I think this is super simple, super simple. And then you can write about your responses also, that I'll discuss the rationale for capitalization and I will tell them to adjust the same into their financial statements. All right, let's move to the next one now. Just a minute. Okay. So you see, we are done with the entire this thing, and we don't really have to go back to any of these statements ever again now for this question specifically. Correct? So this is going to waste help you conserve time, and you will able to better structure the answers also, right? Let's move ahead. LuxPay requires customers to make a deposit of 25% on the amount upon confirmation, and the remaining amount is payable when goods are delivered. So they are saying that they have to pay advance of 25%, like a booking amount or something, before they book a particular product with them, right? LuxPay also offers its customers the facility to return product within 2 weeks if they are dissatisfied with the product or think it is a fake product. So now this is also, again, I'm not saying there is a problem, definitely. I'm not saying there is definitely a risk, but there are two things that we are going to talk about in this statement. Let's talk about one by one, okay? The first thing is this one. They are saying that they are going to take deposit of 25%. Now, immediately, as in when you see this deposit word of 25%, bells should start ringing in your head that this is in relation to your IFRS 15. Revenue from contracts with customers. That says until and unless you satisfy a performance obligation, you cannot recognize a certain amount as your income. Right? And even if you have received that is an advance income, or in actual professional term, we call it as deferred income. Right? Now there is a risk. I'm not saying that company right now is doing a problem. I'm not saying that. I am saying that can be a potential risk wherein they have treated this 25% of deferred income as their normal revenue. So if they show that, that is going to increase or overstate the revenue. And again, if I want to connect, because I'm saying my bonuses are based on profits, management has a tendency to increase the revenue to show it. Probably this is one way by which they're increasing their revenue, because this is also increased from 4 to 15. So you can correlate these points always, right? That 4 से 14 हो गया है, या फिर the management wants to increase the gross profit. So probably this is one way by which they're doing it, right? So this is going to lead to overstatement of your revenue and understatement of your deferred income. Correct? Let's read the answer for this one. Again, super simple. If you people have practiced enough for the questions from your Kaplan Kit past papers, these are nothing. These questions are nothing. These are super sense, easy questions. Okay, all right. These deposits should not be recognized as revenue in the statement of P&L until goods are delivered and accepted. Instead, they should be recognized as deferred income in the current liability as per IFRS 15 revenue from contracts with customers. Management may have incorrectly treated deferred income as revenue to overstate margins, resulting in overstated revenue and understatement of liabilities. This is exactly what I just mentioned. So you are going to discuss with management how are they treating the deposits. Are they treating it as a deferred income, or is it a normal revenue for them? And I will also be checking the schedule of the revenue in the financial statements to see what is advance, what is a liability, what is actual revenue, and etc. Correct? So this is your deferred income. Let's read the next line now. So this red flag is done. Just a minute. Yeah. This is done. Okay. Now, Luxway also offers its customers the facility to return products within 2 weeks. So basically, they are giving a refund to the customers if they are just not satisfied with the products or if they think it is fake. So again, if we go back to our concept, this type of refund is known as a refund liability that we should be making. It's not a provision, guys. If you write it as a provision, that's still okay, but specific word, professional word is refund liability, because you have to return the goods. So it is a refund for them and it is a liability for you. So refund liability you have to talk about over here, that we need to make sure that we are recognizing refund liability as per IFRS 15 again, right? So that is again, we have to talk about that. IFRS 15 says that revenue should only be recognized that to the extent that goods are not returned back to you, right? The company then should recognize a refund liability. And if they are not doing it, then again, my revenue will be overstated and my refund liability will be understated. As simple as that. Correct? Let's move to the answer now for this one. Okay. So statement from the question I've copy pasted. IFRS 15 revenue from contracts with customers requires that revenue should be only recognized to the extent that goods are not returned. That's the reason, guys, if you've seen any of my videos before as well, I have always said that your standards are very important for you to write the answers. If you do not have the visibility or knowledge of standards, you're going to be in a nightmare to write these answers. Correct? The company should recognize a refund liability for goods which are expected to be returned. If the company has not correctly accounted for the refund liability, revenue will be overstated and refund liability will be understated. This is exactly what I mentioned right now also to you, right? So we'll check the assumptions underpinning the refund liability for the reasonableness, if they have recognized that or not. If they have not done it, we'll ask the management to do that, and we'll also see how much revenue have they actually recognized in their financial statements to see what is advance, what is refund, what is actual revenue. Correct? So we are done with this paragraph also. Always go line by line. It is becoming super easy if we go line by line. Correct? Next. Luxbay has recently faced increasing criticism from local tax authority for alleged underpayment during the year, amounting to 2.60 million, and investigations by tax authorities are undergoing. So now that means that I had to pay, let's suppose, say a tax of 4 million, but I have only paid an amount of 2.40 million. So rest 2.6 million I have not paid. So they are saying me, they're suing me, or they're telling me that you have made a fraud, that you are not paying us the amount of 2.6 million. So we have done underpayment. Correct? The decision is not anticipated until after the year end. However, Luxway's tax consultants have expressed concern that this amount will have to be paid. So if you have a you have a probability, you have to recognize a provision for the outflow as per IAS 37. If you do not recognize a provision, it is going to be understatement of your provisions and overstatement of your profits. Correct? So that is what we are going to talk about over here in terms of your IAS 37. Provisions and contingent liabilities. Okay. So according to IAS 37, if there's a present obligation due to a past event and the outflow of the benefit is probable and measurable, a provision should be recognized. This is exactly what the standard says, right? There's a risk that management may not have created this provision, leading to understatement and expenses and overstatement of the profits. This is exactly what I told to you people as well, right? So we'll discuss with the management as a response. We can discuss with the management what are they trying to do with the provisions and the tax authority allegations, and we'll see if they recognize the provision or not in the financial statements. If not, we'll have to ask them for the adjustments. Correct? Let's move to the last paragraph now. Luxway offers a deal where slightly damaged luxury bags and watches are sold at extremely discounted prices to clear inventory after the year end. Okay. This happens during the first 2 days of October after the year end. These deals are hugely successful, with sales volumes drastically increasing in those 2 days. Of course, if in a real life also we have seen this thing that a lot of people put clearance sales, right? So we are putting up clearance sales over here. But the thing is that if our asset, luxury bag is inventory product, not asset. If a inventory is getting sold at discounted prices, that means the value of the inventory needs to be catered to as per IS2, right? So as luxury bags and the watches are getting sold at very discounted prices, that means that there is a very high a risk that my NRV, which is the net realizable value, may be lower than the cost. And if that is done, that would lead to in overstatement of my inventory, because my inventory needs to be written down, correct? So that is what you need to talk about. So let's see the answer for this one. Just give me a moment. Okay. According to IS2, inventory must be valued at the lower of the NRV or the cost. As luxury bags and watches are sold at extremely discounted prices, there could be risk that NRV may be lower than cost, and management may not have written it down, and hence it is going to lead to overstatement for the sale. So this is what you need to talk about in your here. So here we were able to identify 9 risks out of 8. In the actual exam also, you will be given such kind of situation wherein you will always be given 1 or 2 extra risks. So you can write any of the best 8 risks that you know of. Do not write anything extra because you people do not have time. If towards the end you're remaining with certain time, then come back to the question, write as many extra points as you want to write. But when you're writing your answer for the very first time, do not write anything extra, right? So we are done with 2 questions. Let's move ahead with our third question for this case study. All right, let's move to the next question. Okay, question number 3 says, describe substantive procedures the auditor should perform to obtain sufficient appropriate evidence in relation to research and development expense incurred in development of mobile application. This is for 5 marks. That means you have to write 5 substantive procedures. Again, guys, I would say, I know this is a very tricky area for most of you, and most of you do a lot of kinds of mistakes over here. So I would recommend you to go ahead with some of the videos, check some of the videos on my being the YouTube channel of Being SSCA. You will get exactly how are you supposed to write the answers. 2 things I'll not talk about in detail, but I will tell you 2 things that you're not never supposed to do. One is rote learn the procedures. If you're writing all rote learned procedures, that means all general procedures, 0 marks. And secondly, you always have to write assertions. That means the reason why always in your answers. This is one, these 2 are the common mistakes that usually people do, and hence out of this 5 marks the score is 0 because of these. So you don't have to do them. Let's read the case study. Okay, so let's not read the case study. Actually, they are basically talking about the research and development in the mobile application. So what we are going to do, we are not going to be blind. We are not just going to, as student, what I usually see people doing is, they see research and development, they go to their answers, write 5 points, they're good to go. They do not even check what the question said about research and development. So we are not fools, right? You people are not fools. We are going to reread the statement now for this question. So let's see. Here, so that we remember now what did the question say. So it said, developed a new application for this amount. So this is the amount that we can use in our answers for selling luxury products to the application. The mobile application will increase the ease. So this is a use case. Has capitalized the entire amount of this. So again, as procedures are what? Actions that you're going to do now, detailed actions. So first of all, we are going to see that why are they capitalizing the entire amount. We will tell them that please make adjustments for this 1.2 million because training cost should not be part of your IS 38, right? How to use then we'll see the research expenditures, we'll see the development expenditures, we'll see how much work has already been done, correct? So the application is being tested and is expected to be rolled out soon. So what are the parameters? Is it capturing or not? So we are going to focus upon these aspects and use these keywords in our answers: capitalized, training employees, legal fees, increasing the visitors. All of these are the words that we are going to use as part of our procedure. So now I'll show you my procedures. I'll explain you the procedures as well. Okay. So I have written 6 procedures. You can write any 5 of them. So let's start. Okay. Obtain breakup schedule of research and development expenses of 4.6 million done on mobile application and cast for accuracy. Now, guys, one thing that you will notice in my answers is, because I understand from students' perspective, okay, I know that you have a list of PDF that contains all the substantive procedures and you use them as reference, or you wrote learn them and write them in your answers. I will tell you how you can use the exact same procedures, exact same liners, and draft your case specific answers. If you see this exact same procedure without this and without this, you will find in your PDF also, whatever PDF that you refer to. Okay, you will find this exact same procedure. But if you write that, 0 marks, right? So how can we use the same reference and make our own answers? That is the skill that you people need to master. And that will only come once you understand the skill, one, and second, once you practice. Okay. So I've done nothing. Okay, I've done nothing. I've used the same statement, and I have used, see, in the question they said that we have done the research and development expenses of 4.6 million. So I've just included that word. Rather than just writing research and development expenses, I have written research and development expenses of 4.6 million, which is from the question. Correct? Done, on which I have done it on the mobile application. I have done this on mobile application, which is again from the question. Correct? So I've used these two words and made it general substantive procedure to case specific procedure. Super easily. Right? This is exactly how you're supposed to write your answers. Okay, let's read the next one. For those expensed as research, agree the cost incurred to invoices. So you'll see from the invoices, because of course, when you pay somebody, you have invoices from them. So that's one supporting documentation, and supporting documentation to inclusion in P&L, because of course your research expenditure has to be in P&L. So we'll check the P&L to ensure accuracy of the amounts for the mobile application. Again, guys, again, my smart trick, if you see over here, is this same statement without this is there in your answers also in the PDF that you have. Correct? I have just used this word from the question, mobile application, and you can also add off XYZ company name, and it becomes general. It becomes general to case specific procedure. As simple as that. Correct. Next one. Discuss with management the rationale for, this is exactly what I told when I was reading the statement as well. Discuss with management the rationale for capitalizing training costs incurred out of this, and request them to expense it out to ensure accuracy of the financial statements. This is case specific. Correct. So I always say that if a question is for 5 marks, at least 2 to 3 procedures has to be case specific, and rest 2 to 3 can be general ones. So my starting 3 are specific procedures, and rest 2 to 3, if you see, confirm technical feasibility by discussion with development managers and review the feasibility reports to ensure accuracy. So general procedure. Inspect board minutes to confirm management intends to use the application to generate revenue to ensure reasonableness of developing the asset. It is again general. Now guys, again, I will show you live how can I make this fifth one specific to the case. Okay, I say that inspect the minutes to confirm management intends to use the application. Now we have already been given the use case of the application, right? I told you that they have provided us the use case for this application. Let's see what is the use case. This is the use case: increase the ease with which customers book orders, estimated to increase the visitors on platform. So probably I can use this word, estimated to increase visitors on platform. So let's see. Estimated to increase the visitors on platform. So I can write intends to use the application to intends to increase the visitors on the platform. So I'm just using the same words from the question, writing in my answers, making it general to case specific. This again you'll see in your PDFs also, the general ones also. But I'm using the words from the question over here to make it case specific, right? That's fifth one. And then sixth one is about the disclosures as per IAS 38. As simple as that. I don't think that this is much difficult if you follow through this technique. Okay, so this is what you can follow. Let's now move ahead to the last question. If you people remember in the starting of the session, I told you that this question they have tweaked a little bit. So this question number 4, if you see, they have talked about the amendments, all of these, whether it is required amendments in the financial statements or not. These types of questions usually come in your question number 3 because this is from your reporting and review chapter. Last 10th, your chapter number 11 and chapter number 12. Usually, as part of this question number 4, they give you ethics and acceptance chapter or corporate governance deficiencies chapter. But this time in the pre-September mock, they have given this question. So, a little bit of tweak you have done. So, you can also expect some such kinds of changes to be done in the final exam also. No other problem is there. It's just a change of structure, nothing else. Okay. So don't just get surprised in the exam. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay. It is now 31st of December 25, that is after the year end, and tax authority investigation is complete. Luxway has been sent a notice that tax amount payable to authority is additional taxes for this is 2.49 million. So this is additional that they have to pay. Directors of Luxway have communicated to auditors that they will charge this amount in the next year's financial statements as investigations were completed then. No adjustments has been made in the financial statements for this. But this is so stupid. If the tax authorities, if the tax amount is for the current year, why are they shifting it to the next year? Right? The notice, of course, you received that notice after the year end, but the evidence was available before the year end only, right? You underpaid in the current year only. So as per IAS 10, it is an adjusting event, right? So let's see. Requirement based on the information provided, explain whether the financial statements require amendment. Now, guys, there is a difference between two kinds of requirements. Okay, what are these two kinds of requirements? Is the first requirement is this. Second requirement, they say audit report and opinion. Okay, see, if you talk about the trail, how does it move ahead is, let's suppose that I, as an auditor, I am evaluating your financial statements and I have found that you have not paid the tax. So as per me, you should change let's take another example from the question. You knew that out of research and development, $1.2 million out of that amount, the training cost had to be reduced. So you said that adjustment should be done and this amount should show in the P&L and rest can be capitalized. Correct? You agree with me? Now, let's suppose the management says, no, we are not going to change anything. You are now going to contemplate. Now, you are going to say that first of all, you said that because on certain basis, on certain scenarios, you said that yes, adjustment is required because as per IAS 38, this is not the correct treatment, right? So this question is just asking if that amendment is required or not. It is not talking about, because once you decide that, okay, adjustment should be required, and then management says, no, we're not going to adjust. And then you have the opinion changing and report changing because they are not agreeing to you, right? But this question is only step 1. It's not step 3. Right? I'm saying this because a lot of students, because they feel that this question is review and reporting question, they also write about the report also. Modified opinion, qualified opinion, pervasive, whatever. And that's not what the question asked. Question only asked you whether adjustment should be done, whether amendment should be done or not. That's all, right? And then it asks you, okay, if the company is not amending the same, so what are we going to do next? What procedures are we going to do next? That's all. Your reporting and opinion is the third question which they have not asked you. So there is a difference between these two requirements. There's a video on my YouTube channel which is named as Review and Reporting Revision, something like that. It is under the playlist AA Resources. Please go and check that video out. It is going to be very simple for you to understand all of these differences. All right. Let's read the answer. Now, as per me, the adjustments of course has to be done. So your basis has to be you first explain the scenario. Okay, I'll show you the presentation for this one as well. Let's see. Okay, it has been, so first of all, you explain the issue. What is the problem? You directly do not say, yes, amendment is required. No. It is a 2-marker. Write it like a 2-marker. Okay. Luxway has been sent a notice to pay 2.49 taxes to the local tax authorities. This notice was received after the year end. Of course, you received in December, which is after the year end. But conditions of this existed prior year also, but provides further evidence of the tax payable at the year end, and hence it is adjusting as per IAS 10. This is what your answer is. IAS 37 requires if the outflow is measurable and probable, then a provision should be recognized. Now then you talk about the materiality also, whether it is material or whether it is not material. So this amount is material as it is 10.51% of profit before tax. Now, how do you calculate this? This is also a lot of people get confused. So 2.49 million divided by, go back to the question, divided by 23.7 million. Where is it? Yeah. 23.7 million into 100. When you do this calculation, you're going to get this percentage. As simple as that. Okay, so director should create a provision for this and a corresponding expense in this. Hence, an adjustment is required in the financial statement. This line has to be there because this is what the question asked, whether amendment is required. And if you're not writing this last statement, you're not going to score full marks. Half a mark would be deducted. Okay, so that is how you have to present. You first have to describe the issue, then talk about the problem, then talk about adjusting event IS 10 basically, then talk about the materiality, and then talk about yes, the amendment has to be there. Correct? So this whole in cumulative is going to get you 2 marks. And then you can talk about the procedures, that review correspondence with tax authorities to confirm investigations are going upon, review post and bank statement whether you have actually paid this amount or not, inspect the legal notice that you have received and see if it is complete or not. Basically all of those, any 2 out of this. Correct. So this is your entire question number 1 of the pre-September 26 mock. I hope it is clear to you. If you have any questions, any doubts, please feel free to reach out to me on WhatsApp. The number is over here. You can also comment down below, and I'll definitely help you out with that. And please make sure that you're getting these mocks evaluated by somebody because that's super important. I also evaluate them separately. So in case you require any help from my end, please reach out at this number and I will come up with the next 2 questions also very soon. Till then, please keep practicing, keep preparing for the paper, and all the very best for the paper.